Today we're going to be doing a little bit something different. Today we're going to be reacting to a video. We're going to be reacting to Every Currency Dies, the Roman playbook for surviving the coming global currency reset, gold. And the reason why I'm actually watching this video is because we've been seeing gold, silver, palladium, platinum all hit all-time highs. And I feel like everyone nowadays just doesn't really trust the American dollar, doesn't really trust the government, any dollar, honestly, because we're just printing it out of thin air. And I think this guy does a really good job explaining it. So I'm going to react to it. I'm going to let him do most of the talking, but if I have some points that I want to point out and let y'all know about, I'm going to definitely do that. But shout out to Clive Thompson. I just ran across his page. This man has great wisdom, and I think y'all can learn a lot from him. So thank you, Clive.
Hello, dear friends. My name is Clive Thompson. I am holding in my hands my collection of banknotes, which is worth several billion pounds. Or at least...
Wait, could someone tell me real quick? This looks like Tesla right here. Is this Tesla? Could someone tell me that? But that's beside the point.
It was once upon a time, a long time ago. There's pages and pages of defunct notes from all over the world, and what this represents is that almost every currency which ever existed since the beginning of time has gone out of existence. Here we see some banknotes from Weimar, Germany, amongst others.
Did y'all just catch what he said? He said since the start of the dollar and paper currency, or just currency in general, every single one has failed. So it's kind of like, what makes the American dollar bulletproof? I think we're definitely going to see a collapse of our currency. I don't know in our timeline, but it's getting really interesting.
So these currencies have already collapsed. And if you think it can't happen to your currency, you're about to discover why every single fiat currency in history did eventually fail, and what you can do to protect yourself before it happens again. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what's coming, why it's inevitable, and most importantly, how to position yourself not just to survive, but potentially to thrive during the greatest wealth transfer in modern history. Let's start with a pattern.
Let me make sure y'all can see all right. My bad, chat. All right, we should be good now.
Of fundamental truth. Throughout history, all of human history, money always starts as something real, something tangible, something in limited supply. Gold, silver, copper, bronze, even salt, cowrie shells, jade, and those fascinating stone discs called rhinestones from the Pacific island of Yap. But
I think we're going to go with you guys.
That's great. Awesome. Let me get the contract.
One last thing. You're SOC 2 compliant, right?
But here's the pattern. No matter where you look in history, currencies have always gravitated to the three metals, gold, silver, and copper coins. Why? Because they're durable, divisible, and most importantly, they can't be created out of thin air. But then,
like, that's what I don't really think y'all understand. Like, the dollar is literally printed out of thin air. With silver, with metal, that's a natural resource that you cannot just multiply like that. With a dollar, you could literally multiply it like that. And I think that's where, the problems just come in, for sure.
something always happens. Governments step in. They say, hey, carrying all that heavy gold and silver around is inconvenient. let us issue paper notes that represent that gold and silver. It's much easier.
And it's crazy how the government has time and tide just lied to us over and over for their own benefit. And I think he's going to talk about it, but literally the government is just supposed to spend the money that they make from our taxes, that we pay in taxes. That's supposed to be the government spending money, but the government just keeps printing out money, and it isn't just using our tax money. They're using more money that they're printing, so it's just creating this imbalance. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's a promise from the government which you can trust. Well, at first that works beautifully. The paper is backed by real metal. You can take your paper notes to the bank and get real gold coins in exchange for it. Everything's stable and everyone is happy. But then governments discover they have a problem, a little problem which is going to become a big problem. They want to spend more than they are collecting in taxes. Maybe they're fighting wars. Maybe they're funding massive public works. Maybe the social security system's got out of control and the liabilities are just too big. Or maybe they're just buying votes with popular programs. Or perhaps it's all of the above. So what do? They start to borrow. And then they borrow some more. And then they borrow some more to pay the maturing debt that they owe. And then they borrow some more to pay the maturing debt plus the interest they owe. And then they borrow some more to pay the maturing debt plus the interest plus the extra money they want to spend again this year. And so it goes on until the debt becomes unsustainable. And this is where it gets interesting. Once you control the money supply, as a government, you face a temptation that no government can resist. They never have been able to resist it. And the temptation is to print more money to pay your debts and to fund all kinds of new spending and pet projects. Now, the process of loss of value can be very slow to start with because the government is always perceived as being able to repay.
Like, we're literally a business to the government. Like, I just hope that all of y'all can realize this after this video, that the government does not care about you. They do not care about your pockets, how you feel. All they want to see is that money come through from you. So I hate the government.
Because it can raise the taxes to do that. But of course, at some point, we pass the point of no return where it's just not possible to raise taxes enough to pay the debt. And then the currency starts to lose value at a faster pace. People start looking for alternatives. They look for things which aren't liabilities of the government. They look for things which can't be printed out of thin air. And as people shy away from these paper promises, eventually, and we don't know when it will happen or if it will happen, but it's happened always in the past, eventually the whole system starts to spiral out of control and collapses. And when I say it collapses, I'm talking about the currency itself. Nobody wants to take the currency, they want other things. So, here we are. Here's the history. Worthless notes. No matter where you look, pages and pages of them from countries all around the world have issued these banknotes, never to be repaid. And it's happening right now because you know and I know that most of the notes on the planet are backed by nothing other than a promise of your government.
And that's something that I just can't fathom. Like, when the currency does collapse, what happens? Like, are we all going to start taking Bitcoin as payment? Like, I just can't even comprehend the world without a dollar, truly. And I don't know if any of y'all know how the system would work or run. Please share that with me because I would love to know. Hopefully he covers it in this video, but it's just interesting. Like, if no one's working for the dollar and like the economy and like it's worth nothing, like what is work? What is jobs? You know, like what do we do? Like it's a crazy question.
But as far as I know, there's no government currently offering to change their banknotes for their gold. They're all hanging on to their gold for dear life, and for good reason. But this debasement of money is not a new thing. I'm going to take you back 2,000 years to show you that governments have been playing this game for a very long time. This coin that you're looking at here is a Roman silver denarius. This one comes from about 68 BC, something like that. So the story here begins with Emperor Nero, who was one of the first people to debase the currency. He ruled from...
Just want to make sure y'all can see him all right. This dude's just giving out some crazy game. Chat, how does it look? Is it all right? Are we good? All right, bet. That should be better, all right.
rules from 54 AD to 68 AD, about 14 years. Now, he was a bit of a character. He had some interesting choices in life. He married a man named Sporus.
So the Roman emperor at the time was married to a man.
But made sure he had him castrated before he married him, as one did at the time. But let's not talk about his personal life. What did he do to the currency? Well, in 64 AD, there was the Great Fire of Rome, and it destroyed much of the city. Now, we don't know if Nero actually fiddled while Rome burned. That's debatable.
This is insane. History really does repeat itself, yeah.
But what's not debatable is that rebuilding the city was very expensive. Very, very expensive. So Nero did what all governments do. He debased the currency. He reduced the weight of the silver denarius, and he lowered its silver content to about 80%. In modern terms, that would be called money printing, instant money printing, or quantitative easing. But basically, he was creating money out of thin air because the same amount of silver could make so many more coins. But it didn't take long for the public at large and for the soldiers, the army, to notice. Soldiers found that their pay was buying less and less because people weren't fools when they saw there was less silver in the coins.
That's like us today. Like our currency, we can only buy less and less stuff every single day. You know, with $100, that can only stretch so far. So
they hoarded the old ones, which had full silver content, and tried to buy things with the new ones, which resulted in merchants putting up their prices to get the same amount of silver as before. So the soldiers were finding that their purchasing power was evaporating. And unhappy soldiers are dangerous soldiers. There was a revolution. And in 68 AD, Nero heard the horsemen coming for him, and he knew what was about to happen. Rather than face a horrendous execution by his own troops, he killed himself. And that led to absolute chaos. In just 18 months, a year and a half, Rome went through 4 new emperors. First, there was Galba. Now, he tried to restore fiscal discipline, but the soldiers wanted their devalued denarius topped up with bonuses. They weren't impressed, and he ended up getting murdered after just 8 months. Then we had Otho. He lasted 3 months, and he was defeated in battle by the new emperor, whose name was Vitellius. Another one who decided to commit suicide rather than face the consequences of being defeated. Then there was Vitellius, who had defeated Otho. He lasted about 8 months and was defeated by the new emperor.
I wonder where this dude's just getting all his information from. Like, this dude is just so smart.
Called Vespasian. Now, sadly for him, he didn't commit suicide because it became rather gruesome. So Vitellius was captured, tortured, dragged through the streets of Rome, covered in excrement, retortured, and executed in front of a massive crowd on the Gemonian stairs. Vespasian, the new emperor who had ordered that execution, had learned a very important lesson. You've got to keep your troops happy. And he realized that if he wanted to avoid a similar fate, he had to do something. So he did actually do something rather smart. Instead of just printing money like Nero had done, he restored the silver content of the denarius back to not quite where it was before, but 93.5%, which was regarded as good enough. And he kept that stable during his reign, which lasted about 10 years. And that brought some stability back to Rome, and the soldiers were much happier. But how did he do it? Well, he imposed some new taxes on everybody. One of his taxes, which was quite interesting, was a tax on urine. Now, I can imagine that a number of...
And it just sounds exactly the same way that our government is today. It seems like they're always trying to come up with a new way to try to tax us, a new way to try to make a profit off of us, whether that's the COVID shot. Like, y'all don't really want to get into this, but, man, maybe a collapse is sooner than we think, because shit is getting ugly.
The population were probably a bit pissed off about that. But, there was currency stability for a period of 10 years, and the soldiers had their purchasing power back. So, luckily for him, he died of natural causes. So the lesson which he had learned was stable money means a stable empire. Unfortunately, his successors didn't seem to learn that lesson, just as governments of today haven't learned the lesson of their predecessors.
Stable money is a stable economy, y'all. That's good words right there.
So, Vespasian's successors didn't maintain that discipline. They kept gradually reducing the silver content. By the time we get to Emperor Hadrian, here's one of Hadrian's silver coins. It's a silver denarius. The silver content had declined again. It was down to about 87% silver. Not a big decline, but the steady decline was just starting. Now, Hadrian, as you probably know, was famous for building a 73-mile-long wall across Britain. He was very fond of a young man called Antinous. So despite being married to a 14-year-old girl, this is Hadrian being married to a 14...
They were on some weird stuff back then. Like, I'm hearing presidents married to dudes, presidents married to... Dude, people are sick, yo.
Year-old girl.
It's like the government is literally like a sickness, right? Like, everyone in there is just evil. Like, how do you even get inside the government? Like, doesn't make sense.
Named Sabina. He never had children because it seems he preferred Antinous. Antinous ended up drowning under mysterious circumstances. But let's move on a little bit and not talk about their personal lives too much. The point is, We were now down to 87% silver in the denarius, and the debasement was continuing. And we go forward a few years and we get to Commodus. He ruled from 177 to 192 AD. That's about 15 years of rule. Now, he was a bit of a piece of work. He kept a harem of 300 girls and boys. His favourite hobby was dressing up as a gladiator and fighting in the arena. Now, that wasn't because he was brave. When he went to fight, his opponents were deliberately wounded before he got to fight them, or they were armed with wooden swords. So he wasn't really taking any risks. But, to his joy, he defeated hundreds of other gladiators in the ring, all of whom were effectively defenseless against him.
It's insane. Whenever you're in power, like you're that head guy, like you could pretty much do whatever the hell you want. And I think that's what it just comes down to, is that power. At the end of the day, like whoever's in that chairman spot, whether it's Trump, whether it's Obama, I think like if they truly just have like a power and an egotistical mind, they're gonna try to do whatever they can, like to be that king, to go down in the history books, because if Trump takes over Greenland, he just took over Venezuela. I mean, this is something we're definitely gonna be talking about in the history books, in 100, 200 years, and it just sounds insane. Time is insane, and it just doesn't make sense, but it sure does repeat itself, and it's insane. It's insane.
But under him, the denarius continued to be devalued. The silver content fell to 75%. And here's a coin, and if you can see it, this is what...
This dude's crazy. This dude has every single Rome coin.
Commodus' silver denarius. You can still see it's...
That's insane. Like, it's literally the same today. Like, if you put a quarter right next to it, I can't tell the difference. It's insane. That's insane how they did that, like, at that time.
Shiny to some extent. It's still got that, almost that silver sheen, but it's got some other metals in it now. Step forward a few tens of years, and we get to Caracalla, the Emperor Caracalla. Now, he was emperor at the age of 8, and lasted quite a long time, right through to his 20s, in fact. He was joint ruler with his brother called Geta, but Caracalla was a bit of nasty work. He murdered his brother Geta, who was in his mother's arms at the time. And he was a particularly wicked citizen, wicked person for the Roman citizens. He imposed a 5% inheritance tax on everybody. Okay, so far so good. But after he had murdered his brother Geta, he had some 20,000 people executed for the alleged crime of mourning his brother's death, because they weren't supposed to do that. And he had his brother's image erased from all the statues and monuments and anything else. Despite getting this extra tax revenue from all these people who had just been murdered by him, the army was still unhappy. So what did he do? He doubled the army's pay. And how did he double it? Debased the denarius down to 52% silver. And here's a coin. I've got a coin from Caracalla. It's not nearly as shiny as the ones we saw before.
Wow. This dude literally minimized the material that was made from the coin and raised the... wow. I hope y'all understood that. That's a shame.
I'll show you that coin. So that's one of Caracalla's...
Like, imagine that's your currency right there. Like, you just, that shit's worth nothing.
Silver denarius coins. It's kind of lost its silver sheen, I'm afraid, because of the fact that it's only got about 50% silver in it. The debasement continued decade after decade, and within 50 years, the silver denarius, once over 93% pure silver, had gradually become nothing more than a copper coin with a thin silver wash on it. The currency that had built an empire, that had funded the greatest military machine in the ancient world, the currency that had facilitated world trade across 3 continents, eventually became worthless. And the Roman Empire? It collapsed not long afterwards. Now you might be thinking, interesting history lesson, but what's that got to do with me? It's got everything to do with you. Because we are watching the exact same pattern play out right now in real time across the entire globe.
Oh my gosh, it looks like he's about to get into giving us some sauce right here. He said it's happening around the whole entire globe.
Why do houses cost more than they did when your parents bought one or your grandparents bought one? Because exactly the same thing is going on today as went on 2,000 years ago. The currency that you use to buy things is being debased, and it's being debased because your government is borrowing more and more and at a faster and faster pace than has ever been recorded in history. The decline of the Roman denarius was slow and steady. It took nearly 300 years for the silver content to reach zero. The value of your currency is heading to zero faster than anything that we saw in the Roman Empire.
Oh my god. Y'all just hear what... No. The dollar is collapsing faster than the Roman dollar. Oh my gosh. No, this is huge. What?
Central banks have been printing money on a scale that would make even Nero blush. And in the past 15 years alone, we've seen more currency creation than all the currencies ever created since the beginning of time. Is it going to come to an end, or can we just keep kicking the can down the road and expecting everything to be the same with a little bit of inflation, officially 2 or 3% inflation, and prices don't go up much, and we keep using our money and saving and earning a bit of interest? Will it be the same? Well, I don't think so, because as this government debt gets larger, and I'm talking about all governments here, from Japan to Europe to USA and anywhere else you care to look in the Western world, the interest burden on these governments is becoming higher and higher. Not only is the debt increasing in absolute terms, it's also increasing at a faster pace than the economy is growing.
Oh my gosh.
So that basically means the interest burden is rising at a faster pace, and a much faster pace, because there's an accelerated effect here, than the economy is growing. And what that means is more money has to be borrowed to pay the interest, and then when that matures and the interest becomes due, even more has to be borrowed, and it gets faster and faster. It's impossible to put a time scale on it, but when we have circumstances like this, the general ending is we move into a period of higher inflation and eventually hyperinflation, and then some trigger comes along and there's a complete collapse of the currency. This is a trigger we don't see coming, maybe a war or a financial crisis or a loss of confidence in government bonds or a currency crisis. But we do know that the conditions are set for when something goes wrong. So we know the story will end. We know how it ends because we've seen it before and recently. Many examples in recent history in the last 150 years. Weimar Germany in the 1920s, where people reputedly needed wheelbarrows full of cash to buy a loaf of bread. China in the 1940s, before the Cultural Revolution, where the currency became so worthless that they had to introduce a new one at the rate of 3 million old yuan bought you 1 new yuan. And
like, imagine it's the year 2025, the year 2050, and you're going to the grocery store and you're just trying to get a sandwich, and a sandwich is like $150. Like, That's literally the rate we're on right now. I'm talking 2 breads and a slice of cheese, not even with no meat. $150. Like, that's the rate we're on right now. It doesn't make sense to me, and like this is insane.
More recently, what have we seen in Venezuela? We've seen that the bolivar has lost 99.99% of its value. Even qualified people like doctors had to take jobs like Uber drivers as a way to get paid in dollars. We had Zimbabwe, where they printed $100 trillion notes. I've got some of them here. Let's have a look. There's your $100 trillion note. But those notes in Zimbabwe aren't worth anything today. And even when they were in circulation, they weren't enough to buy a loaf of bread. And what we're seeing, what we have seen, is going on in many parts of the world. Countries like Lebanon, where the currency, people's bank accounts have been frozen, the banking system is effectively collapsing, and the currency has lost 90.
Like, they're just freezing your bank. Imagine you got all your money in a bank right now and they just freeze it and you can't ever touch that money again just because that bank needs to pay America or America needs that money. It's all bullshit.
Percent of its value. And who's next? Maybe Argentina, where inflation recently exceeded 100%. Iran, Iraq, Turkey, they're all showing warning signs. And the rest of the world, your country, might not be far behind.
Imagine being able to build anything.
America is
just by
definitely not
thinking
far
about it.
behind.
Meet Base 44.
I'll tell you that right now.
Okay, now let's stop with the doom and gloom and talk about what you can actually do about this. The good news is that throughout history, people who understood what was happening and what was coming positioned themselves correctly. And they didn't just survive, they thrived. They made it to the other side while others lost everything. So I'm going to give you your survival checklist for what's coming. And it's not.
This is big time right here. Y'all listen to the man himself. This man has been giving us straight game for the last 23 minutes. Right here, he's about to break down a survival game plan on how us regular humans that just did a little bit extra time, you watch this video right here and this could set you up for your generation. So you deserve to learn about this if you went this far in the video.
Hard. You don't have to do a lot. The first thing you need to think about is having some gold and silver coins.
I need to get my notebook out. Hold on. Because this guy, hold on. Everyone needs to get out a notebook right now and write this game plan down because this right here could be generational wealth right here for y'all. And I'll start thinking about your kids. Your kids' kids. This is what it's about right here. What do you say?
Think about is having some gold and silver coins. I'd love to show you some, but I don't keep them at home for obvious reasons. So when I say gold and silver coins, I don't mean ETFs, exchange traded funds, or mining shares. Yes, you can have those as well if you want, but make sure you've got some where you can find them and get them very, very quickly and easily. And this, fun enough, is the one thing that most people haven't even done. So when the crisis hits, everybody will be rushing to try and get this gold and silver, but you won't find anyone willing to exchange it for you. It'll all be gone.
Oh my gosh. He just gave it out. We all need to stack up on silver and gold right now. Silver right now is trading at, I want to say, $100. Gold is at 5,000 an ounce right now. Copper 5, silver at 100. So right now gold is at 5. Gold at 5K slash an ounce. Silver is 107. Platinum 2000. Unreal. Copper. I might need to get my hands on some copper too. Copper's really cheap. Holy smokes. Look at silver. Look at silver. Like, this dude definitely knows what he's talking about. Oh my gosh. In August, silver was at $37 an ounce. Now it is trading at $107. This is unreal. Unfreaking real. I cannot believe what I'm looking at. Like, all right, let's see what else this guy has to say for us. I just want to show y'all those prices.
Some signs of that in the last week when we found that many gold and silver shops were literally out of stock. Now, is that a warning sign of what's coming, or is that just a temporary blip? I'm hoping and expecting it to be a temporary blip. But when the real crisis comes, you won't be able to buy gold or silver anywhere for anything. Now, one thing to know about gold and silver is that in a hyperinflation environment, when inflation is rising very rapidly, the buying power of gold and silver is likely to increase much faster than the consumer price index or the retail price index. And the reason for that is that in an inflationary environment, the number of people who will want to own gold goes up dramatically. But the amount of gold out there doesn't go up dramatically. That means the price of gold and silver potentially gets squeezed a lot higher and a lot more quickly than consumer prices, which maybe are rising by 10, 20, 30, 50, 100% a year. Gold and silver will move upwards much, much faster than that. So in Weimar, Germany, the value of gold relative to real estate or property increased so rapidly that towards the end you could buy a nice house with just a few gold coins.
Wow.
Think about that, just a few gold coins for a house. Think about buying things that you might need in the future with the cash that you have today, because that cash, at some point, you're going to find it suddenly devalued, and it's better you own things you're going to use anyway. So I'm talking about durable goods, things that have a very long shelf life. Now, these could be things like razor blades, whiskey, tools, batteries, matches, candles, toilet paper. As we learned during the COVID panic, everybody wants toilet paper for some reason, don't know why. Sugar, soap.
Like, toilet paper is literally more valuable than your dollar that you have in your pocket. Isn't that crazy? Like,
aspirin. Now, and if you have the space, why not animals or maybe chickens? Also, you can own foreign currencies if you trust them. What else can you own as we go into a currency reset? Well, I'm going to say businesses, and by that I mean, for most people, stocks and shares, equities in the stock market. As a general rule, businesses do survive currency resets, but not all businesses survive. So it depends what type of business it is and what type of goods it has and where it's selling them. So a business which is selling goods domestically in a hyperinflationary environment will do very badly because its business is denominated in a currency which is going to zero, and effectively the business will go to zero with it because it's got nothing to lean back on. On the other hand, if you've got a business with lots of international sources of income, they're selling the goods all around the world, it's much more likely to survive than a purely domestic business in a country where we have hyperinflation. What else can you earn? Let's talk about real estate. You can own land and real estate, but this has to come with caveats. The problem with land is that it's attached to the ground. You can't hide it. You can't move it. You can't walk away with it. And it's very easy for governments to tax or even seize your land during a crisis. But as a general rule, land does survive, provided it's not confiscated or taken off you. So if you own it before, as a general rule, you'll own it afterwards. But there's no substitute for investing in your own home. If you can do a home extension or improvement or redecoration, it's another way of adding value to your home. Again, be careful. It's not a pure inflation hedge. Don't hold all your wealth in real estate. As I said, there could be heavy taxes and confiscation. Now, what happens if you want to or have to invest in bonds? Maybe you're a pension fund, you've got some restrictions. So I'm certainly not saying you should invest in bonds. In fact, I personally
Me, if a crisis comes, I'm having a whole lot of gold and a whole lot of chickens. Simple.
wouldn't. But if you're going to do it, make sure you diversify across multiple currencies so that if one of them were to fail, you got something to fall back on. Be careful. Many portfolio managers, financial managers, are very keen to hedge bonds back into the domestic currency. You don't want to do that, because if your domestic currency goes to zero, the effect of the hedge back to your currency will take the value of your investment back to zero. So don't do it. You're hedging away the extra protection you get by being in foreign currency. In general, the losers are those who hold claims on the government and on government bonds, whether that be money in bank accounts, money market funds, government bonds, bonds issued by third parties, fixed pensions, cash, savings. All of these could become worthless in a currency reset. And again, I want to stress, we don't know what form a currency reset will take. And by the way, if you're liking this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, please.
Definitely go like and subscribe to this dude, because he definitely, he just saved a lot of people for sure.
Hit the little bell for more.
Ever wonder how to invest in high-growth
this
startups?
dude right here is so
Alumni
knowledgeable.
Ventures is the answer. Whether you
I
want
learned
to
a lot
outsource
from
the
this
investment.
video.
Now we're going to get on to the summary of the winners and losers. So those who are likely to be the biggest winners are the ones who do the following. They own physical gold and silver. They own productive real estate, i.e. real estate which is rented out and producing an income. They own businesses or equities, and typically equities which are doing business internationally and which have got some sort of pricing power so they can keep raising prices when inflation rises. And lastly, own hard assets, whether that be property, commodities, equipment, intellectual property, any kind of hard asset that you can lay your hands on, which will still be there when we get to the other side. Now the question I get asked is, what will happen to my mortgage? So very often in historical situations where we've gone into a currency reset, that has always been preceded by very high inflation. And high inflation erodes the value of your debt in real terms. In some currency resets, some debts or all debts have been completely wiped out. So let's just summarize it up now. We've seen what's happened before. We can see that it's going to happen again. We've seen the same pattern: Rome, Weimar Germany, China, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Lebanon. Let's go through the steps. 1, the government takes control of the money. 2, the government borrows more money than they can afford to repay. 3, they print money to cover the shortfall. And 4, the currency loses value as people run away from the currency because there's no hope of ever being repaid with money which has the same value as when you lent it in the first place. In other words, it becomes more difficult to fund the government, then the central bank has to step in and be the buyer of the last resort of these bonds. And where does the central bank get the money to become buyer of the bonds? It has to print it. So that printing then turns into inflation because the government's borrowing more. Someone gets that money, someone says, I've got all this money, I'm going to invest it in something. The higher the inflation rate is, the more likely they are to buy inflation hedges, such as gold or businesses. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you found this video interesting,
A shout out to Clive Thompson. Folks, I hope you really listening to that because this is a real life thing that is going on right now. If y'all look around all over the place, every country it seems like is struggling. And me personally, I live here in the States and I definitely could see this, and seeing gold and silver react the way it is has just been leading me to ask so many questions. And I feel like what Clive really got to me was just really owning gold and silver, owning productive real estate that makes you money, owning business or equities, and owning hard assets. This dude did an amazing job breaking that down. I thought I'd just share this with y'all because this is super valuable and this is something that is actually going to happen. So I hope y'all actually take what y'all learned from this and actually apply it. And I'm going to see y'all on the winning side. That's all I can tell y'all. If y'all like this video, make sure y'all like, subscribe, smash that bell.